Tonight, for your viewing pleasure, is Ham Radio Horizons, your introduction to the exciting and diverse world of ham radio, or what is more properly known as amateur radio. And amateur doesn't mean doing it poorly, it just means it's an unpaid hobby rather than a profession. And the space shuttle on the cover is not just for show. Several of the astronauts on the space shuttle were licensed ham radio operators and did use it to communicate with people on Earth. This video is from 1993 and was produced by CQ Magazine, which is still in publication today. People often think of ham radio as an antiquated and arcane hobby, and it does seem to be true that most hams are in their 60s or older, but surprisingly the number of licensed ham radio operators is still increasing. I just checked the latest count, and currently there is almost 800,000 licensed ham radio operators in the US, and that number grew about 2% compared to last year, which isn't a fantastic growth rate, but at least there's enough new people coming into the hobby to make up for the people who are becoming what they call silent keys, or those who are simply losing interest in the hobby and failing to renew their license, which is what happened to me because I got my ham radio license when I was 13, and although I fully understood all the technical aspects of radio transmitters and receivers, making a few contacts on a Radio Shack HTX202 handy-talkie is as far as I ever got in the hobby, because I soon discovered that my passion with radio lied more in the broadcasting end of the spectrum, as you've seen from many of my videos. And even if you aren't necessarily interested in ham radio, this video has plenty of footage of the now vintage computers that ham radio operators were using back in 1993. So I hope you'll stay tuned and watch Ham Radio Horizons by CQ Productions in 1993 on tonight's episode of VHS Night.
Establish contact as soon as they come over the horizon. Over to you, Ralph. N6NMN. MNN. This is SARX Control.
Okay, folks, here it goes. KB5AWP, KB5AWP. This is N6MNN. N6MNN calling KB5AWP. You around, Ken?
6MNN. 6MNN. This is KB5 AWP on Atlantis. How copy?
I'm copying you very well now. Go ahead.
Okay, Ralph. Good signal. I hear your voice much better now. We must be just coming into view over your horizon.
Ham Radio Horizons.
Introducing a hobby without boundaries, without barriers, and where not even the sky is the limit.
I grew up drawing pictures of rockets. There were no men in space when I was little. I'll never have the opportunity at my age to go into space. But maybe I can talk to somebody who's up there.
This is W5, Lima, Foxtrot, Lima, in the spacecraft Columbia, calling CQ North America.
I had the absolute thrilling experience this last month of meeting the astronauts who were up in the Atlantis on the SARX experiment.
Well, good morning, this is KB5 AWP on Atlantis.
The Gulf War, I heard a few stations from Saudi Arabia on, and I've heard some Israeli stations, and they would tell me, you know, whether they had a quiet night or whether they had, whether they were under attack or whatever the conditions were, and I wasn't getting it from a news broadcast. I was getting it from a person.
The nice part about radio is you're not usually seeing the other person unless you're into ATV, and so you're on a complete equal level with them. There's no way they can be prejudged as to anything, as to your age, as to what you look like. If you're handicapped, if you're a superstar athlete, you're all equal on ham radio.
There, in a nutshell, is what ham radio's all about. People talking to people. And everyone's on a first-name basis, young or old, male or female, able-bodied or disabled, teacher, student, astronaut, king.
This is Juliet Yankee 1, Hussein on the mic.
Yes, you can talk to just about anyone on ham radio, and you can do lots more. During the course of this program, we'll meet a variety of hams, see some of what they do, and learn how ham radio can be much more than just another hobby. We'll also try to answer some common questions and shatter a few myths. Plus, we'll meet Henry and Henrietta Ham, who will guide us through some basic ham speak, a special language that's understood by hams around the world, but makes very little sense to anyone else.
Let's start with ham radio itself. Just what is it? And what does ham stand for? First of all, ham radio really doesn't have anything to do with pigs. Hams are officially known as amateur radio operators. Amateur radio is their hobby. Hams around the world talk to each other using their own two-way radio stations. Just imagine sitting in your basement or your bedroom, flipping a switch, and talking to someone halfway around the world. Hams do it all the time.
Next question. Why are hams called hams? Simple answer. No one really knows. Many hams will claim that they know the true story. But the problem is, there are 5 or 6 different true stories around, and none can be confirmed. We do know this. Amateur radio operators have been called hams, for whatever reason, since the earliest days of radio. It's a nickname that has stuck, and it's one we all wear with pride.
Hams often know each other only by first name and call sign. I may talk to your best friend Joe Smith every day, but I may not know his last name. If you tell me his call sign, though, I'll recognize him right away.
A call sign is a unique combination of letters and numbers that becomes your ham radio identity. Here in the United States, all ham call signs begin with the letter A, K, N, or W. U.S. call signs are issued by the Federal Communications Commission.
SM3, Hotel London, London, Kilowatt, November 8, Zanzibar.
That's KN8Z in Ohio, talking ham speak, to SM3HLL, a ham in Sweden. Hotel London, London, and Kilowatt November 8 Zanzibar are phonetics for their call signs, a way of spelling things out with a word for every letter. This often makes things easier to understand, but can also lead to some interesting combinations. For example, a ham in Taiwan might be Bravo, Victor 8 Oscar Golf Uniform, BV8 OGU. Closer to home, Whiskey for Papa, Juliet Foxtrot, is W4 PJF. He lives in Florida.
Now let's take a look at some of the people you'll meet in ham radio. One of the greatest things about ham radio is that you never know who you're going to meet on the air. Just listen to Carol Perry, WB2MGP, a teacher who uses ham radio in her New York City classroom.
Now, one day on the net that we were on, somebody checked in N5QWL, and I said, oh, could you please get on and introduce yourself? And he said his name was Jay, and I said, at that point, one of my novices had the mic. I said, ask the man what he does for a living. And the response came back, I'm an astronaut.
Ham radio is becoming very popular among space travelers from many nations. Plus, music stars Chet Atkins, Ronnie Millsap, and Bon Jovi are all hams. So are former U.S. Senator Barry Goldwater, newsman Walter Cronkite, and as we saw earlier, King Hussein of Jordan. And while there's always a chance of bumping into one of the many celebrities who enjoy ham radio, most hams are just plain folks like you and me.
Well, I am a lawyer. That's what I do.
I'm an electrical engineer.
I work for the U.S. Department of Commerce.
I'm a software engineer.
I'm a medical doctor, a cardiologist.
I'm a vice president of marketing for a local distributor of industrial equipment.
I'm a detective captain. I'm a social worker.
I am a Franciscan sister.
On ham radio, you are quite likely to meet people of all ages, from all walks of life. And while it's true that most hams are men, the number of women in the hobby is growing quickly.
I think women are starting to come around and decide that it's a nice hobby. And a lot of women who are married to hams are being talked into getting their license so that they can talk back and forth like on the way home from work. And say, okay, go pick up the kid at daycare, or I need something at the store, are you at home yet? It's an excellent way to keep in touch locally between spouses.
My husband is not a ham. He said, this is my thing, and he's going to leave it that way.
There's just so many avenues open now. If you like computers, if you like all kinds of different aspects of the hobby, I think there's a lot of different aspects you can go into, for men and for women, naturally.
A lot of women feel that they are not qualified with the electronic theory, I think. But it's not that hard. And you can go to classes. We have classes here and teach you the code and the theory.
I remember feeling kind of intimidated at first, not quite sure if I should push that button, and then as soon as I started talking, and you feel very natural doing it.
I don't think women should be intimidated by the hobby. Yes, it is. You can get into a lot of technical issues with it, but there's a lot of people out there that are more than happy to help you.
One of the things when I first got involved was I was very reluctant to ask anyone questions, and particularly to ask men questions. You kind of don't want them to feel like, oh, you don't know the technical end of it. A lot of the technical end I didn't know, but I found that almost everyone was more than happy to talk to you about it, to help you out, or to answer your questions.
I think more and more women are getting interested. And if they get an introduction to it and meet other lady hams, YLs as we call them, they get more interested.
I'd like to see more women out there on the airwaves. It is, at the moment, somewhat male-dominated, but I feel that if they find somebody, a mentor, in our terminology is an Elmer, if they find an Elmer that can help them with studying for the exam, that they should really try it. It's a fascinating hobby.
And ham radio's not just for grown-ups.
CQ, CQ, CQ.
Laura Sobon of Raleigh, North Carolina was just 8 years old when she got her ham license. Up in New Jersey, Caroline and Daniel Savio are a brother and sister ham team. Daniel was only 10 when he earned his extra class license, the top of the heap in ham radio. Both Daniel and Caroline like to let their fingers do the talking. Daniel prefers making contacts in Morse code, ham radio's secret language of dots and dashes, while Caroline prefers the computer keyboard for her contacts. She enjoys radio teletype, or RTTY, and something called packet radio, which connects your radio to a worldwide network of on-the-air computer bulletin boards.
Most young people get very few chances to talk with adults on an equal footing. Usually, the grown-ups in their lives are authority figures, parents, teachers, and so on. But young hams get to meet, and sometimes make friends with, a broad variety of adults, and they're all on a first-name basis. Of course, there are also plenty of other kids on the radio.
I guess I would have to say I like talking to kids more than I do adults. I especially like to work kids and find out what they're doing in ham radio, how they get interested, do they have a club at their school.
A school radio club is a great place to get started in ham radio. And later on, we'll talk more about using ham radio in the classroom. It's a great way to learn all sorts of things and have fun doing it.
Ham radio has one more important benefit for young people.
I've been a law enforcement officer for 30 years, and I am happy to say that I've never arrested a ham in my life.
Tony DiBiase spent 23 years in his department's narcotics unit.
Elaborate on it more. Yes, certainly ham radio is one of the best things for a young person to get into. It's a good, healthy interest. It's interesting, it's challenging, and certainly the type of person who will, move towards something like ham radio. They're not going to be involved in drugs. They care too much about themselves.
Well, my mother-in-law got her novice and technician license starting at 75 years old. When someone tells me, gee, I'm too old to do it, and I says, no, you're not. Not when Mom can do it. She's KB4 KAA.
Ham radio is also very popular among senior citizens, especially retirees who have thought about it for years and only now have the time to pursue the hobby.
Well, I studied radio 50 years ago in the Air Force, and I didn't end up doing it because then when I finally moved here, I saw the radio club, so I picked up on it. I had the code in my head yet from 50 years ago. And then, of course, we had the good teachers here who taught me and helped me, and I got my license here.
Here is where Herb Unger lives, the Winmore Retirement Community in South Florida.
We have a club station here. This is operated by a condominium, a club station in Coconut Creek.
I retired. I was a podiatrist, and I retired, and I came here, and I found a home. They didn't have a club here at that time, but I put an ad in our journal. We had 5 people, and we started classes and everything else, and the thing has grown now. I don't know exactly how many members we have, but it must be 60 or 70.
Well, I'm next to the youngest I found out. I'm only 73. I found the 70-year-old.
The walls of many ham stations are lined with postcards called QSL cards from hams around the world. These cards are exchanged to confirm radio contacts. Most hams consider them prized possessions. Most, but not all.
Ham radio is open not only to people of all ages, but also to people with all levels of physical abilities. It is truly a barrier-free hobby.
Ham radio offers a unique opportunity for the disabled, I think. It gives them an opportunity to see something brand new. With their disability, they tend to be a bit closed in. And this is a way they can open up a whole new world of friendship, new world of knowledge for them, and it becomes like a big family.
Johan van Nimwegen is Director of Instruction at the Courage Handy Ham Systems California Radio Camp, and he speaks from first-hand experience.
I was one of the polio victims in the early 1950s, and I was a quadriplegic for most of my teenage years. And during that time, some friends of mine were ham radio operators, and they got me started in the hobby because I was basically at home and I didn't get out, and it was a wonderful opening.
Ham radio has helped me by being able to get out and socialize with people since I became disabled visually, whereas I wasn't doing that and was fearful. Ham radio has really helped me meet a lot of nice people.
I have heard a number of individuals who happen to be handicapped say to me, I like amateur radio because the individual talking to me, they don't know that I'm any different than they are. And sometimes people judge individuals because they're different.
To find out more about ham radio for people with disabilities, contact the Courage Handy Ham System at Courage Center, 3915 Golden Valley Road, Golden Valley, Minnesota. There are Handy Ham members and volunteers all over the United States.
Well, I think for anybody, ham radio is excellent, whether you're, quote, disabled or not. It opens doors for anybody, any age, any race, any condition, whether you're able, disabled, or whatever. It's just a superb avocation to get into. And I've been an amateur for 14 years.
Just about anyone who's interested in radio communications can be a ham, but not everyone is. Not even other radio hobbyists. For example, shortwave listeners who listen to international broadcasts are not hams. Scanner enthusiasts who follow police, fire, and aircraft communications are not hams. Neither are Citizens Band or CB radio operators. To be a ham, you must hold an amateur radio license, and you must pass a test in order to get one.
However, many hams get their start in these other radio hobbies. They may be a good starting point for you too. But let's take a look at some of the reasons that more than 600,000 Americans have decided that ham radio is the hobby for them.
And they met the fellows in the radio club.
CQ calling, CQ 20 meters,
CQ is ham speak for calling anyone. Hams often get on the air and call CQ just to see who will answer. CQ is also the name of a popular ham radio magazine, published by the same company that produced this program.
It would be too simple to say that hams just talk to each other on the radio. They do that, of course, but there's also much more. In fact, the variety of activities in ham radio is almost as great as the variety of people in ham radio.
Sugar Mike 3, Hotel Lima Lima in Sweden, Kilowatt, November 8 Zulu. Take it away.
Talking to people in faraway places, what hams call working DX, has long been one of ham radio's main drawing cards. Part of its appeal is the fact that calling CQDX, CQ for calling anybody, and DX meaning a station in another country, is kind of like going fishing. You never know what's going to come up out of the water.
Delta 4 Alpha Charlie Whiskey, Sierra Victor 5 Tango Sierra. Very good evening, 59 on the island of Rhodes.
It's almost like traveling and to be able to visit a country without really leaving the comforts of your den or your living room or wherever you have your station set up in your car or your home. And I found that to be very fulfilling, just to be able to take that trip around the world without leaving my home.
Another popular activity is what hams call rag chewing. No, it's not what it sounds like. Rag chewing is like shooting the breeze, an expression that means sitting around and chatting. And most hams just love to rag chew, on or off the air. There are hams who meet every day on the radio and become on-air friends with people they may never meet in person. A favorite time for rag chewing is while driving back and forth to work. Most hams with radios in their cars use automatic relay stations called repeaters to extend the range of low-powered mobile and handheld radios.
Many repeaters are able to link hams directly into the telephone lines through something called AutoPatch. It's available for personal, emergency, and other non-business calls. One of the few limits on ham communication is that you may not conduct business on the air.
You can stay in touch with home. You can perform a public service, maybe calling in an automobile accident through the local auto patch and the repeater. You can provide communications for a shelter or for a hospital during time of a hurricane or natural disaster emergency.
I've helped persons in a motorcycle accident that were ran over by a huge truck, and I feel that I may have saved their life because they were really in bad shape. I was able to call the fire paramedics, and they were on the scene within a few short moments. And those are the times that it really counts.
Emergency communication is what most often puts ham radio in the news.
This is the heart of the National Hurricane Center. And right next door is the amateur radio station.
When natural disasters cut off normal communications, hams often seem to be able to put a signal on the air and make contact with the outside world. Sometimes it's the only link between a disaster area and the rest of the world.
Like Hurricane Andrew or Hurricane Hugo, ham radio is the one thing that consistently works without fail every single time.
Hams learn the skills they need for emergency communications by relaying messages called radiograms and by providing safety communication for parades, bike-a-thons, and even the New York City Marathon.
So far, most of the hams we've seen have been talking into their radios. But voice communication, what we hams call phone, is only one way of getting the message through. One of the newest and oldest forms of non-voice contacts is digital communication. The simplest form involves turning your transmitter on and off in a certain pattern. This is what hams do when they're using Morse code. At the high-tech end of the spectrum, we have packet radio, which links computers over the air. Hams can exchange messages or check into a worldwide network of packet bulletin boards without tying up phone lines or paying for access time. Packet radio is one of the fastest-growing activities in ham radio today.
Speaking of high-tech, and you can't get much higher than this, there's also a large fleet of ham radio satellites orbiting overhead. Hams around the world use these satellites for making DX contacts. sending packet messages across the globe, and even exchanging digitized photographs. Some ham satellites even take their own pictures, which hams on Earth can then record and view on their computers. Sending pictures by ham radio is nothing new. Hams have been using amateur television for as long as there's been television. They can send pictures over long distances with something called slow scan TV, or use regular television for local contacts. With a special adapter, you can see ham TV on your TV.
Finally, there are hams who may do very little communicating, but still are very important to the hobby. They're experimenters who enjoy continuing ham radio's proud tradition as a hobby at the forefront of communications technology. Now, emergency communications and technical innovations make ham radio an important hobby, but it's still basically a hobby. And hobbies are basically fun.
In some countries, ham radio is called radio sport. That's because of some very popular, very competitive activities. For example, on-air contests.
Radio Alpha 1, Norway Alpha, 59 Massachusetts.
There's some sort of contest on the air nearly every weekend. The general idea is to make as many quick contacts as you can in as many different places as you can.
In one contest, called Field Day, hams show off their skills to the public. On the fourth weekend in June every year, hams around the United States and Canada set up makeshift stations using emergency power and temporary antennas. Then they go on the air and try to contact as many other Field Day stations as possible. Many Field Day stations are operated by local radio clubs, which may also sponsor licensing courses. Field Day is a great chance to get a first-hand taste of ham radio in action. You'll also meet local hams who can help if you decide to give ham radio a try. Later on, we'll tell you how to contact a local club.
Another bit of ham radio competition is called a fox hunt. In this case, the fox is not a real animal. It's a ham radio transmitter that's been hidden in some out-of-the-way or unlikely place. It can be very simple, or like this setup, very elaborate. All of the hunters start in one place and use direction-finding antennas to track the signal being transmitted by the fox. This intense but friendly fox hunt was held near Flemington, New Jersey.
I'm telling you.
You can listen to hams by tuning in the ham bands on a scanner or shortwave receiver. But these bands don't play music. Ham bands are chunks of the radio spectrum where hams are allowed to transmit.
Each band covers a range of frequencies, which are measured in something called hertz. 1,000 hertz is called a kilohertz, and 1,000,000 hertz is a megahertz. Don't ask about gigahertz.
Ham bands are often referred to in terms of meters, such as 2 meters, 10 meters, or 40 meters. This refers to a signal's wavelength at a given frequency. So don't worry. You can tune them in even if your radio has no meters.
Many hams combine their radio hobby with other hobbies.
I'm an amateur genealogist. I want to make worldwide connections, etc. Many hams are interested in just talking, how's the weather, and how's this. That don't interest me. It's just making connections worldwide to pursue my hobby, my other hobby.
Jim Hirschman, K4TCV, is an avid boater who says ham radio is a fun way to keep in touch and out of trouble.
I was relatively new in boating a couple of years ago, and my engine got soaked with water, so it wouldn't start. But fortunately, I had enough battery power to call some of my friends on the waterway net on 40 meters, and one of them was an expert in my type of engine. We spoke for a couple of hours while he told me how to take my engine apart, get the water out of it, and then dry it. I dried it with Jamaican rum and put the engine back together. And the engine started, and we were able to motor out of harm's way and sail home. So without ham radio, I would have had either a dangerous situation or a very expensive tow.
Doug Johnson, KD4SQ, operates ham radio from his airplane. And he says he doesn't need a lot of fancy gear.
I operate quite frequently with the handheld that you can see sitting there in the center console with its own rubber ducky antenna. From an altitude of 1,000 to 2,000 feet, I can talk over 100 miles.
Ed Webb, W4FQM, operates from his airplane on a wide range of ham frequencies that give him worldwide as well as local area coverage.
Everywhere I have gone, ham radio has gone with me. Even when I was in the service, I always took my ham gear. And ham radio, every place I've been, has always made friends for me. But of course, your first duty is to fly the plane. And when you have a moment, you can squeeze in some ham radio.
And as we saw at the beginning of this program, there are some flyers who have truly made ham radio out of this world.
Do you tend to reevaluate your life when you look at the Earth? Over.
Yes, we all do. In fact, we're very thankful for what we've been able to accomplish and what so many people have helped us to be able to do. And when you float up here above the Earth in our little spacecraft and look down at the great big spacecraft that we all fly on, it makes us all think about what our priorities are. Over.
Many of the voice contacts made by American astronauts are scheduled in advance with students at schools around the world. Ham radio's value as an educational tool is one reason that NASA encourages this ongoing Shuttle Amateur Radio Experiment, or SAREX.
Ham radio in the classroom is good for much more than talking with astronauts. In our next segment, we'll take a look at ways that ham radio can help nearly every part of a school curriculum.
It gives you a heck of a good lesson in geography, which apparently, I guess, is a real problem for America these days. But I know where Kuwait is because I've worked stations in Kuwait. And I have some friends that I talk with on a regular basis in other countries. So it's been, in terms of giving you a bigger worldview, amateur radio really connects you to the rest of the world.
If you're worried about how you or your children are doing in math, science, geography, communication skills, foreign languages, or other school subjects, consider ham radio.
Working with teachers, helping them develop strategies to meet the needs of gifted kids and other kids in schools, problem solving, critical thinking, independent learning activities, enrichment.
Chris Levisi is a Kentucky educator who started a ham radio program in the Bardstown Middle School.
We have actually a little bit over 100 of our students in grades 6 through 10 who are licensed amateurs. Those kids are in all different kinds of classes, obviously. But our social studies teachers, particularly in the middle school, use those kids when they have a project. Then they allow the kids to come over here to the ham shack, get on the radio, do some research, find some contacts, try to develop some information from people actually in Europe or South America or wherever they're studying. So in that area they're doing it. Foreign language teachers are allowing their kids to come in and to get on the radio and to practice.
F6GZF, est-ce que vous êtes là?
So that gives a wonderful opportunity for those kids to actually practice and to try their skills out and to get on the air and to see what they can do.
What better way to practice your French than by speaking to someone in France? Likewise, math and science concepts can click more easily when applied to real-life problems.
I'll go out and buy 10 computers at $2,500 a shot, and they can justify that, and those computers will sit unused in a classroom for days, weeks on end. They might be used for 10 or 15 minutes a day, and they can justify that. And I said, look, give me $2,000 and we can set up an amateur radio station that is first class, worldwide communications. We'll put your kids in touch with people all over the world, and they'll learn new skills, and they'll learn study habits, and they'll develop friends and contacts, and they'll actually bring the concept of the global village into reality, because it is real when you use amateur radio. When you can reach out and talk to someone in New Zealand, Australia, Japan, Soviet Union, Germany, it's exciting and it's new and the kids love it.
Teachers around the country are using ham radio as teaching tools. Pete Kemp, KZ1Z, of Bethel, Connecticut, has a full station in his classroom and even uses amateur television.
Now that we have them all focused in, you're going to want to transmit the signal. So move your hand around to this button here. All right, now flip it up to transmit, and the red light will come on, okay? And so now we're sending the signal out via the fast scan, the amateur television.
Ham TV was also a key part of Moonbase America, in which nearly 100 Ohio high school students spent a week living in a simulated moon base. Ham radio was their main link back to Mission Control in the high school auditorium. And student moonwalkers sent back pictures from the somewhat muddy lunar surface via Ham TV. To find out more about ham radio in the classroom, contact the Educational Activities Department of the American Radio Relay League in Newington, Connecticut. The ARRL is ham radio's main national organization in the United States.
Ham radio can be a big help after school, too. Thousands upon thousands of hams say that their hobby has helped them shape or advance their career. Here are just a few.
I wouldn't have my job now if I wasn't in ham radio to begin with. It's really how I got interested in computers. Primarily when packet radio began, I guess about 10 years ago, I really got interested in computers, and at that time I was an electrician. And I went out and I spent a lot of money and bought a computer a long time ago and got very active in it and decided to pursue it, and went to school and jumped ship and changed careers. So it's been a good starting point for me.
When I first got into ham radio, I couldn't talk in front of about 3 people, but because you talk to so many different people and have to sort of do it off the cuff, got so I could speak in front of lots of people without any problems. So I think that's helped my career quite a bit. But of course, getting into the programming aspect of ham radio and packet radio has certainly made me a better engineer.
I was in the electronics business for 20 years, and I made contacts all over the world. We worked on the space shuttle and the telemetry stations, and I made contacts everywhere. Lifelong friends.
Even hams with jobs that have nothing to do with electronics or communications say ham radio helps them do a better job.
The skills that a contest requires, for example, ability to function under pressure, ability to function while you're tired, ability to organize your thinking when you're, when you haven't slept in about 30 hours. The ability to function under stress in general comes in handy in the business world, and also knowing that if I have the ability to do well in a contest, I can probably figure out a way to do well in the real world, so to speak.
I'm a detective captain in the Morris County Prosecutor's Office, and recently transferred from the narcotics unit, which I spent 23 years in. So obviously you can see coming home operating the rig for a couple hours was a nice change of pace from dealing with drug dealers and deaths and what have you. It was my mental health treatment each day to come home and turn the rig on.
No matter what sort of job you have or want, chances are there's another ham out there who's in the same field. And since many hams are leaders in their fields, every contact you make on the radio could turn out to be the contact you need to advance your career.
The owner of my company is a ham.
Keep in mind, however, that you may not actually conduct business on ham radio. To have a business discussion with another ham, use the phone.
Now, I'll bet you're sitting there talking to your TV and saying something like,
"Well, that's great, but I hear ham radio is very expensive, and I'm not sure about all this technical stuff. Besides, don't you have to learn Morse code to be a ham?"
These are some of the most common myths about ham radio. So before we tell you how to become a ham, let's take a minute to set the record straight.
Yes, ham radio can be very expensive, but it doesn't have to be. Of course, a big fancy station and a big fancy antenna will set you back some big fancy bucks, But you can also have a great time with a simple handheld station, available used for under $300. You can even find better bargains at ham radio flea markets. Another point to consider is that when you do lay out a stack of money for equipment, it's usually a long-term investment. These radios work for years, so a $1,000 radio that gives you 10 years of use only costs you $100 a year.
Your investment in technical knowledge works the same way. You can start out with just a little, then gradually build it up as the years go by. There are 5 levels of ham radio licenses in the United States, and the 2 entry-level licenses, novice and technician, are really quite simple to earn. Plus, most hams will be happy to answer your questions, and many radio clubs sponsor licensing courses to help you along.
Morse code is and always has been a major part of ham radio. But now you can become a ham before you learn the code. The technician class license lets you operate on some of ham radio's most popular bands, use FM repeaters and computerized packet radio. And you don't need to know Morse code. To become a technician, you only need to pass a written exam on basic theory and operating rules. Once you've gotten some experience on the air, you may decide to learn the code in order to advance to a higher class of ham radio license. All higher class licenses do require that you pass a Morse code exam. Now you may be asking, how do I learn all this stuff? Where can I take a test? And exactly where does my license come from?
You can teach yourself what you need to know for a ham license. There are several study guides available at electronics stores and by mail. Check CQ Magazine or other ham publications for more information. But it's best to get hooked up with a ham in your hometown, or better yet, a local radio club. Hams are pretty easy to spot. Their houses often have towers with big antennas, and cars with extra antennas and call sign license plates.
Many radio clubs sponsor licensing courses. This gives you other people to learn with and instant access to experienced hams who can explain anything you don't understand. Many clubs that run classes also offer license exam sessions. Testing for ham licenses is done by volunteers around the country. Most sessions are scheduled for evenings or weekends. It's easy to find a club, too. The American Radio Relay League, or ARRL, will send prospective hams a package of information, including names of registered instructors, radio clubs, and upcoming exam sessions in your area. There's no charge for the package or the phone call.
Once you've learned what you need to know, and you've passed your test, your license application comes here, to the FCC's licensing division in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. It's checked over for errors, entered into the computer, and within a few weeks, your very own ham license arrives in the mail. That piece of paper is your membership card in the worldwide community of amateur radio.
About 15 years ago, a call came out from a ham in Guayaquil, Ecuador, requesting emergency assistance. I came back to them, and it turned out that a woman who had just given birth had suffered severe complications and was in need of a very rare and exotic antibiotic. We searched the Miami area for 2 hours before we located some of that antibiotic. We managed to put it on an airplane and fly it down. It got there in about 3 hours. The woman was saved. About a year ago, I was giving a talk on emergency communications, and a man walked up to me. He turned out to be the ham who was in Guayaquil, Ecuador, and I met him for the first time 15 years later. He told me that if I ever visited, he would introduce me to the woman and her 15-year-old daughter.
Your ham radio license gives you 2 very important things: permission to operate a ham station and a call sign. That unique combination of letters and numbers that becomes your name on the radio.
Hi, I'm Sal Anastasia, WM2H. I'm from Williamstown, New Jersey.
My name is Sister Alverna O'Laughlin. My amateur radio call sign, WA0SGJ.
This is KD4OZC. My name is Laura.
Once you get on the air, you'll hear a variety of words and abbreviations that hams commonly use. We've already explained some of this ham speak, but there's a lot more. For example, Q codes, 3-letter groups beginning with Q that mean nothing in any language except ham speak.
When you contact someone, you have a QSO. You tell the other person your name and where you live, your QTH. When you're all done, you may exchange QSL cards to confirm the QSO. The QSL gets mailed to your QTH. Here's some more ham speak for you.
Fine business, old man. You're full quieting here. We're just running an HT with a rubber duck on this end. Over.
Now here's the translation. Fine business is short for okay. Old man is any male ham. A female ham is a YL or young lady. Full quieting means a strong signal with no background noise. And an HT with a rubber duck is just ham speak for a handheld radio with a flexible rubber-covered antenna.
Hams use a special number code to tell each other how their signals sound on the radio. A report of 59 indicates a very clear, very strong signal. The best way to learn all this ham speak is to get your ham license, get on the air, and talk to people. Don't be afraid to ask questions either. One final thought on ham speak. Most of these abbreviations were designed as time savers for people using Morse code, in which every word must be spelled out. For voice contacts, plain language often works just as well or even better.
To learn more about setting up and operating various types of ham stations, we recommend CQ's Getting Started video series. Getting Started in Ham Radio showcases typical first station setups, tells you where to find different types of ham activity, and explains the basics of getting on the air. You can learn more about specific operating activities from Getting Started in Packet Radio, Getting Started in DXing, and Getting Started in Amateur Satellites. Additional topics will follow as CQ's video library continues to grow.
There are also many fine books available on different aspects of ham radio. A companion book to this program, also titled Ham Radio Horizons, provides a more detailed introduction to the hobby. Two excellent general references are the ARRL Operating Manual and the ARRL Handbook, which is a standard technical reference throughout the electronics industry. CQ Magazine and other ham publications keep you up to date on new developments and offer a variety of projects for beginners and old-timers alike.
3 other sources of information for the prospective ham are the American Radio Relay League, which represents most of the active hams in this country and sponsors about half of the license exam sessions nationwide, the W5YI Group, which sponsors over a third of the license exam sessions, and the National Amateur Radio Association, a smaller group which focuses on new hams. But for one-stop ham shopping, nothing beats your local radio club. This is your best source for finding out about classes and exam sessions, getting help when you don't understand something, learning about new things to do in ham radio, and starting to make friends in this worldwide people hobby.
Ham radio is more than just an electronic hobby. It's a way of joining friends and keeping friendships together. It's a wonderful family-type atmosphere.
At the end of a contact, hams wish each other 73. It's an old telegraph code that means best regards. But if you're signing off with your husband or wife, you'll probably say 88. That means love and kisses.
We asked hams across America what they'd say to someone who was discovering ham radio through this program. Now in closing, we'll share some of their messages to you. Thanks for watching. And 73.
It's easy. It's not nearly as difficult or formidable as it seems in the beginning. Ordinary people with ordinary IQs without a lot of experience can learn to do it.
I have found that every ham or anybody associated with ham radio to be absolutely helpful.
I found the same thing on the air. Anytime I said to someone, I'm not exactly sure what that means, if they asked me a question, if they asked me something, they were really, really helpful, and that made it a lot easier.
Ham radio is an amazingly diverse hobby.
There's room for all kinds of people in it.
There's probably 50 different sub-hobbies in amateur radio.
It's a hobby that the more you get involved into it, it's addictive. The more you want to get involved into it.
And the various pathways of fun in ham radio can be satisfying to almost anyone. Computer science, digital communications, talking with dots and dashes if you care to, talking with keyboards if you care to, talking with microphones if you care to, playing around with television communication if you care to, satellite communication, or just plain talking from here to 2 miles down the road with a handy-talkie. There's all kinds of ways to have fun with ham radio.
Talk to people on your commute. You can talk to other people via satellite. You can talk to other people in other countries via satellite. You can use television to talk to other people. Some hams bounce signals off the moon to talk to each other.
You have the opportunity with the proper equipment to talk to the astronauts on board the shuttle.
You don't need a whole lot of equipment or expensive equipment. That's what scared me away for years.
It's like a diamond in the rough. It's what you want to make it.
You're entering not only into a new fraternity, but also to some new friendships. And the friendship aspect of it is one thing that I dearly love about it.
It's a hobby that will stay with you for the rest of your life. It's a part of my life, and I've been very happy to be a member of the community.